everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. My name is Dan Murphy, and with me always is the wonderful Derek Brissett and the fantastic Stu Hardy. Gentlemen, I'm fired up to talk about the East because I think it's just a much more complex situation when we look compared to the Western Conference. We have a lot more uncertainty because half of these teams are new. 5 games new, right? So I think we're gonna have a lot of fun kind of diving into it, but we do have a little bit of news to go into first.
I just want to say too that when we do this East preview, if you can't tell based on our attire, this will be a 100% non-biased episode. Not like we look at all teams, we're treating all teams equally. There's no favoritism here at all. So it should be good. It should be good. Lots of exciting teams in the East. Probably a better conference pound for pound than the West. So should be a lot of fun and absolutely no bias.
Yeah, and to be very clear, we did not plan this. This was not something that we text each other in the group chat. Wear as much Arrow stuff as you can. No,
the only clothing I own now is rugby stuff. So
it's slowly becoming that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the
between that lion sweater I wore in the last episode and all the Arrow stuff. It's starting to just get out of hand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dan, your background also just brightly prominent Arrows logo. I'm sure that's a coincidence.
Well, in Canada too.
Your background, I missed the Pokemon posters and stuff though, man.
Oh, those got sent away. Those are we sold one of them. They're gone.
That's a shame.
It's gonna be the new quote unquote studio. I'm gonna fill this wall with a bunch of rugby stuff. So
you're growing up.
Looking forward to it.
It's gonna be a growing minutia of rugby stuff slowly but surely. All right, guys. Well, speaking of growing, World Rugby has kind of dropped a fantastic but a bombshell nonetheless. They have announced that in 2023, a year after the pushed back World Cup, they are announcing a new women's 15s tournament. They're calling it the W15 tournament. They're investing 6.4 million. And I don't know if that symbol is pounds or euros. I'm assuming it's pounds, Stu. You'll have to confirm that for me.
Let me just use my Britishness to find out. If I can't see it, it's therefore been affected by Brexit, and therefore it's a euro. Let me just check. And I say that just because I think the governing body is in.
I feel like
Europe, but it is 6.4 million British pounds.
Yeah,
it may be because the article's from BBC.com. Maybe, but it's a good amount nonetheless.
I feel like don't you watch enough rugby to know the difference between a pound?
I'm sorry they don't talk finance in the middle of a scrum, Derek.
They always. What are we talking about? What do you mean? We don't talk about finance in rugby. The biggest story of last year. You guys keep ripping on me because a certain team spent a little too much money, and
I just hear the million. I don't hear the pounds or the euros. Anyways, whatever. So this competition is going to have 3 tiers, which I think is the biggest part about this new tournament. Offering consistent international test match opportunities to 16 teams, help them prepare for the 2025 World Cup, which will be expanding as well, going to 16 teams for 2025, which is a big point. I think the really, really awesome part about this is going to be, exactly what's going to be happening every season. You know what you're going to be ramping up for. Really, the only tournament that goes on every year is the Six Nations. Other than that, there's no other consistent women's tournaments. There are test matches, but they're always kind of sporadic throughout the year. So this is something that supporters of women's rugby have been saying. We need to have consistent test matches and tournaments for high level teams so they can get the reps in and get better. One of the things that the naysayers of women's sports always say is that it's not entertaining, or it's not the same level as the men's counterpart. Well, it's not going to get better if we don't give them the test matches. So this is a great opportunity for it. And in terms of Canada's situation, they are going to play into a play-in tournament with the US, New Zealand, and Australia. and it's just a round robin. You play everybody, and then the top 3 teams move into what's called the top tier, which will be 3 out of the 4 teams from that qualifier basically will then play the top 3 teams from the Women's Six Nations, and then that will be the top tier tournament. And then the loser of I call it the Oceanic North American qualifier, Pacific qualifier, thank you, will then go to the second tier with a bunch of other teams. So it's I want to hear your guys' opinion, because I just talked a lot about this and how I am excited about it. The big thing for me that worries me a little bit is that there won't be any relegation after the first round, which, it being only 2 years towards the World Cup, I think that kind of doesn't reward teams like Spain, who like have a really strong women's program and really should be in the Six Nations. But anyways, I want to hear how you guys feel about it, because it is brand new. There are still a lot of questions about it. But how important is an investment like this for rugby across the world?
I think it's a fantastic opportunity for a lot of these teams to now be able to, showcase their talents consistently. So by having this competition between Canada, the US, Australia, and New Zealand, because it's quite easy for you to think of like the Canadian men's team and think like, oh no, here comes the slaughter, here comes Canada finishing last. But for the women's team, Canada is usually one of the top 3 teams in the world playing in the women's game. Unfortunately, the other top team is New Zealand and the Black Ferns. So, but you have that like high quality performance that is now going to be happening at least once. Ideally, if this tournament works, then it can be replicated as like a warm-up tournament in 2024 as well, and then you can get consistent games with Australia and New Zealand and the US. Obviously, that is yet to be seen. But with the expansion of the Women's World Cup, there needs to be a guarantee of more game time. And if there's more game time, then hopefully there'll be fans in attendance and more revenue, and that hopefully will lead into more revenue for the women's game, both for these national teams and then for the 2025 World Cup as well. So yes, 6.4 million may sound a lot to us. It may not sound a lot to, the financially minded, like say Bill Webb, for example. But, we have to start somewhere. And at this point, I feel that as soon as they say, we can have attendance for sports back in Canada again, I think a lot of people just go to the game just to be able to, experience live sport again. So,
man, how great would it be to have that tournament in Canada? How awesome would that be?
Huge.
Australia, New Zealand, the US, it'd be amazing.
Have a double header at BMO Field. I think that would be fantastic.
Oh yeah, or like wherever the Arrows are playing that year, have Arrows in the morning, Arrows at 1:00, and then the women play at night. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. But that's what we mean, as in like we're already talking about like the future possibilities of what this tournament can bring. And we're just talking about the prelim to this tournament. We're not even talking about the tournament proper. Because, there's a 75% chance that Canada will be then facing the top 3 teams in the Six Nations which means England and 2 other teams. So I think that and then I'm going to go against, I'm going to say that not having relegation for this tournament is going to be beneficial, because from an investment point, you want to see how well this can do, even if it's only going to be for 2 years. And the top tier not having relegation is more for that financial sense. So that you'll be having your teams or those national teams facing home and away fixtures, possibly. Again, it's very early days. We're not entirely sure how the structure of this tournament will be, but I think like having that financial security for 2 years and then saying like, well, that worked well, so now we're going to have promotion and relegation, and because Spain's knocking on the door. at number 6, and we want to give them a shot. I think there are going to be some negatives. Obviously, we don't know how COVID and the pandemic is going to pan out. Hopefully, it's not going to take as long as getting to 2023 for things to be finalized and sorted out, but you never know. So I think keep a level-headed expectiness for the time being, but I'm seeing the net positive so far, and it looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm just stoked for Canada, the United States to be in the same pool as the Black Ferns in Australia every single year. I think that's going to be awesome, and I look forward to watching it. I hope it works out well. I think, like Stu, you kind of mentioned, I think just getting regular game time against top level competition is the most important thing. It's a regular international test calendar for a lot of the women's teams hasn't really been a thing up until this point. So it's nice to see that we're working towards it once the world goes back to normal and the World Cup is finished.
And the really cool thing that they're hoping to do, I mean, they're not guaranteeing anything, but they want to make it free to watch. They want to be free to consumers to bring more women and girls into rugby, is what the chief executive of World Rugby said. So that would be an amazing coup. And we're going to talk about.
I was going to say, speaking of free to watch, Dan,
free to watch.
Take advantage of it. Speaking of free to watch.
All right, fine. You know what? Let's
perfect segue.
Right,
yeah,
perfect segue.
And I'm glad you thought of that all by yourself.
Speaking of free to watch, since the time we last recorded, MLR announced that they are going to have a free to watch service for fans to watch their games that are out of geo-blocking. So for our example we would be able to watch all of the Arrows game or all the non-Arrows games because TSN has the rights to the Arrows in Canada. And that launched today with the branding and everything. I've got the app downloaded on my phone. The Rugby Network, in conjunction with the Rugby Pass, launched today. So for all of our Canadian listeners, you will be able to watch all of the non-Arrows games. Most will be available live, and the highlights and the articles are there. They've already dumped a bunch of their documentaries. Like, I was cleaning the dishes and I was watching the Paul Mullen documentary about how he was stuck on an island off the coast of Ireland. That was just a crazy story. It's really great. I think it's a really, really great step. And they talked about with some of their other partnerships that they've done, that they wanted to make this app for fans to be kind of a one-stop shop. Do you guys think they've succeeded in this? How do we feel about this app and the process, and still free to watch, which is after going from Facebook to this?
I was at work for most of today, so I haven't really had too much time to poke around the actual app or the website. But I obviously I visited it. It looks cool. I like how I liked seeing all those Rugby Pass documentaries, Dan, that you alluded to. There was a bunch of articles already up there. It looked like Pat Clifton wrote a bunch of season previews for every team. Which is great to see, especially since right now it seems to be the only new news articles on the website. And it's I mean, if you are a new fan and stuff, it's a real quick and easy resource to go to learn a thing or two about each of the 12 franchises in the league heading into the season. So I thought that was really well done. And I mean, it looks cool. It looks it looks clean. It looks it looks what you would expect out of a major professional sports league in in North America to put out as far as a streaming service goes. So for that, I'm excited for it. I can't, it's obviously this is match week now. So I'm super stoked for it. I love the idea of also having the replays up. That's got to be a key thing. I think with the MLR, with what they did with YouTube and Facebook, being able to watch the games whenever you want, especially since as we kind of see the schedule on Saturday, there's a lot of games that are overlapping. So I mean, it is nice. I know maybe not every single fan's going to do it, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to go back and do their best to maybe watch every game in its entirety. So having the replays and stuff, I think, is great. I am very curious to see, especially with where you're geo blocked. So for us, the Arrows games, but also I'm curious to see how fast the replays go up after. Just out of a sheer curiosity thing. Not really. I just want to. I'm just wondering how fast they're actually going to be up. Is it going to be like 15 minutes after the final whistle, or do you have to wait a day or two? So I'm not too sure. So I'm just kind of curious to see what happens with that. It's not really a criticism or anything. It's just wanting to know what happens with that. But other than that, it looks good. Like I think I said when I was like the Dallas Jackals brand reveal, I'm a big fan of green and black. So whole app is green and black. So well done on the color combination there. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about. I want to see, and they also announced that they were doing that like all access show on Fox. So it's nice to see the MLR kind of going out and start, creating a lot of their own content and stuff to be more engaging with their fans. So I think it's a great step forward for the league ultimately.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Agree with everything that Derek said. And for all our international listeners and viewers on YouTube, is that you can use this app and you will have the benefit of having access to all the matches, whilst we will be geo-blocked for those of us in North America. I think it may also say a precedent and say that, so if MLR goes to, say, the UK, for example, and says, we have a viewership of however many hundreds of thousands using our app that are located in the UK, Sky Sports, BT Sports, do you want to buy the rights for live games? In which they say, yeah, sure, here's a few 100 million, hopefully. And then it can be a case of the app may get geo-blocked in certain countries, but more money into the league is obviously a good thing. It seems to be following on to similar things in other sports, like other professional sports, like the NFL app, I think also includes highlight packages. I'm not entirely sure about entire game replays, but obviously, this is a rugby podcast, not an American football podcast. So
just be better than the NHL one, and I'm happy. That's
yeah.
the bar. If you clear that bar, I'm happy.
I think one of the big things for new fans would be, and you mentioned this, Dan, is they have the documentaries that are already on, that are the essentially like Rugby Pass originals. But if there could be more focused accounts for MLR, for example, a certain Canadian team being the outsiders to an all-American league would be definitely one that I'd be interested in watching.
They should do an HBO follow the arrows this season.
I feel like that stuff would be coming. I don't know if that'd be
yeah, for sure. And
if they're gonna invest in the fact, like they said, they called it the Rugby Network, right? It's not just gonna be the way at least that it seems like they're talking about it. It seems like it's gonna be a lot more than just, hey, here's some live games that you can watch.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think they were already kind of leaning into that a little bit. We saw, do you guys see the RUNY video with Ben Foden?
Yeah, I was about to mention that.
Or whatever, and he gets, is it Ermescu that lights him up, or whatever?
Yeah,
somebody.
He verbally calls for the ball that all the players can hear, and then has half a second to react before being absolutely winded.
Yeah. Oh, it was a good hit, man. Ermescu looks.
I can understand why he say it's his final season of rugby if you take so many of those hits. But
this is practice. Oh my god, I gotta play the Legion on Monday or on Saturday. Why did I say Monday? Whatever, Saturday.
To get back on point, it does seem that this is another net benefit for rugby as a whole, for the league. I think there may be a few teething problems to begin with, but that's what happens with any new technological enterprise. But ultimately, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to having all the highlights in one place. I think that it's going to be great.
It's good. Well done.
In terms of media as well, MLR have announced that in partnership with Fox Sports, they're going to have MLR All Access, which will be a 30-minute review show weekly, which is fantastic. On Fox Sports, that's a great advertising little tool to get people again learning more about MLR and the weeks that were and showing highlights. You want that kind of stuff. The Arrows itself actually also announced that they're doing a pre-game and post-game show. They announced it on their kind of season preview party, but they've now officially announced it on their social media as well. So fantastic seeing individual teams and also the league putting their weight behind media as well. So excited about that. And before we get started into the previews, there was a late night to me because I'm an old man. Announcements of some players leaving the Seattle Seawolves, and they're two pretty big players. One of them is Canadian Brock Stoller, who, thanks to some research from Reddit, he announced on the Seawolves fan page that he's actually retiring and staying in Canada, which we wish Brock the best of luck. You know, he is the highest scoring Canadian in MLR. He holds that title for now. So we appreciate everything that he's done. Two-time MLR champ. Good luck in retirement, Brock. His teammate in that second championship, Stefan Coetzee, has also left the Seawolves. Not too clear about why he's leaving, but in the COVID world, there really are a lot of reasons why players are deciding not to leave their home countries or take up rugby again. Guys, this is kind of changing how I know, Derek, this is changing how you felt about the Seawolves' chances going into next season. I know for sure those are two big pieces, and you know they've added another hooker, a Namibian hooker, and apparently there's rumors that a Japanese winger might be joining the team. I mean, you can put Ross Neal on the wing. They've got a bounty of center, so maybe they put Ross there for now. But these are big pieces to lose or to announce that you don't have right before the season starts.
Yeah, I think obviously Coetzee and Stoller, two key cogs on that team. It's kind of interesting. I know, last year, Sema kind of took, when Sema came back from his injury, he kind of took the kicking duties away from Stoller a little bit. And I mean, when you're going 13 for 13, I mean, you might as well let that guy kick. I mean, I would anyways. It's a good coaching decision, I think. But yeah, so it's I wonder if Stoller was going to have a diminished role a little bit, as far as maybe Sema was going to take over that. So I don't know if I'm not 100% sure if they're out who would be their kicker. They are obviously out one of their top wingers. So I mean, if, as America's Rugby News kind of reporting, or that Akito Yamada was coming over here, that obviously softens the blow a little bit. So I mean, and then Kotze Obert Norche, 17 caps for Namibia. He's a solid hooker too. So, but it's it's 100% a depth hit. You keep losing these guys before the season, but
because they're now down to two wingers or two hookers.
Yeah,
if one of them gets hurt, they're
hookers. Their wingers are now Busby, and then both City Vanya and Sulawesi Temai Venya. So both of them twins. Yeah. They're the wingers now. So if Yamada comes in, he probably slots in ahead of probably all three of them, as far as a depth chart kind of goes. But I guess we'll wait to see. That'll be I guess we'll wait to see. I don't know. Do I back out of my Seawolves are going to make the playoffs prediction from last episode? No. You know what? No. Let's go with no.
Ooh.
Let's go with no. I'll keep it. I'll keep it there. Just because I already said it. So why not? You can't back out.
Go back on your word.
Yeah, exactly. I already said it.
All right, I like it. I like it.
I can't take it back now.
The podcast was already if it's said on the podcast, you can't go back on it.
Exactly. Everybody's got to deal with injuries this year. It appears that almost everybody's dealing with players dropping out last minute. So so I'll keep the faith. So let's I'll stick with it.
Interesting. Well, not to be
they're finishing last.
Well, I had them as third and missing the playoffs. Maybe
and now you have them seventh, eighth.
Yeah. Well, one thing that interests me is that if Stoller announced that he was going to retire, why is it now coming out that they've left the club? I think there's, but then again, this is the same team that posted a picture, and then everyone was debating of whether a Seattle Seahawk decided if they decided to join the Seawolves.
Maybe that's the move. That's the third hooker coming in, Luke Wilson. maybe they.
No, he's got to be a locker, an 8-man. I think that he's too lanky.
He can be what he's Luke Wilson. He can be whatever he wants.
Whoever he wants.
Be whatever he wants. He can call up Nate Ebner, get some football to rugby.
He's busy with the sevens. He's
yeah, but I mean, he's sure you can call him. I mean, he's probably got 5
Too
minutes.
busy.
That's big. That's big news too. That Ebner's coming back for the Olympics.
Yeah,
fascinating.
But yeah, ultimately, I wish both of them the best. Obviously, Brock in his new career choice, whatever that is. Again, this is very late news. We haven't been able to do like full research into what he's doing, and and Coates, it's just a huge loss for the Seawolves, and they've already lost a lot of notable players already. So I've got a feeling 2021 may be closer to how they played in 2020 than 2019.
Yeah. And they lost, now that I'm thinking about it, the Free Jacks, they lost Vili Toletau too, right?
Yeah.
So your literal MVP hooker gone, and then Coates's gone. So Obert Norche, he's got some big shoes
to fill.
Yeah, so
now
luck to him.
Vili was playing flanker when he won that MVP.
Oh yes, you're right. Yes, he was playing flanker when he won the MVP.
All right, well,
he's still an MVP, and was a hooker, so MVP, and it works.
All right, guys,
make it work on the resume.
Well, let's get started with the previews. We wish Brock and Stefan the best of luck. So we're going to do things a little different than we did last episode, mainly because last episode was long, and poor Derek had to do all that editing. So we're going to keep things.
And poor everybody else had to listen to it for 2 hours.
No, listen. I will listen to a 2-hour podcast. That is not a problem. You just got to listen in bunches. But anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going
to listen to it in bunches because it's too long. Man.
Oh my God, stop. All right, so we are going to, together as a team, talk about the Arrows, and then each one of us pick some teams to talk about, and we'll answer a few questions, but we're going to keep it light and breezy with the other teams, but look at what we're wearing right now. The Arrows are...
As I said, no bias. This is a NOLA Gold fan podcast, clearly. Look at Stu's gold wall. Dan, I think that you have a gold doorknob back there. This is...
Yeah, it's brassy.
This my wall's kind of, it's beige. It's a shade of gold, I think, right?
No, it's the white that mixes with the gold.
All right. The Toronto Arrows have an MLR record of 15 wins, 0 draws, and 7 losses. Key additions include Gaston Cortez, Marc-Antoine Ouellette, Canadian, Joaquin Tuculet, Sayaki Vikilani, Canadian, Jason Higgins, Canadian eligible, Manuel Montero, Juan Cruz Gonzalez, Adrian Wadden, Canadian, and Ross Brody, Canadian eligible. They have, and again, because they are a Canadian team, we want to mention the non-Canadians: Cortez, Montero, Cruz Gonzalez, Tuculet, Thomas De La Vega is back, Manuel Diana is back, Taylor Adams is back, Leandro Livas, Gaston Mirez, all back.
You don't want to list off alphabetically every Canadian that the Toronto Arrows have, Dan?
No, God, no. Time crunch.
Start with the staff.
The key departures, and we've talked about them on the podcast. Sam Malcolm's out in Japan. Richie Ayazada is with the Queensland Reds. Dan Moore has retired. Now, guys, before we recorded, I've been doing a little bit of podcast hopping and show hopping, listening to what people feel about what the Arrows' chances are. And every time I see something or read something that comes up about them, the big thing that comes up is about the fact that they're going to be gone from Canada. You know, the additions that they've made, fantastic. Cortez, Montero, Juan Cruz Gonzalez, Tuculet, of course, and some of the young Canadians that they've brought back into the fold, into pro rugby. But a lot of people are worried that, and myself included, and I talked about it with San Diego last episode, but being in Atlanta for if they make the playoffs, almost 21 week season, and not being able to see your family, whether that be parents, girlfriends, fiancés, wives, children, I feel is going to have a big factor. And on the Rugby Rant podcast, they talked about how in the NBA, it was such a problem that they had to let families in. Now they have a lot more money that they can allow to do that. I don't think the Arrows are going to be able to foot the bill for all the families to come down. And I can't remember which Arrow talked about it, but they were on a podcast talking about how it's going to be hard. Pardon me?
Rumball, MLR kickoff was kind
of maybe, but they talked about how having spouses or whomever come down and visit is going to be really hard to do, because no matter how long they stay, they then have to isolate in Canada for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So you chalk up 2 weeks onto however long they stay. So even if they stay for a week, it's 2 weeks. That's 3 weeks. And unless you have a job that works from home, like that is taking a whole lot of time out of your, your job or your schooling or whatever. So that is a really tough pill to swallow, to say, hey, you guys are going, down to Atlanta. You're not going to be able to see your family, and we're going to put you in a hotel first, and then we'll figure it out from there. And maybe if things change in Canada, if the vaccine rollout is effective, we'll get back up to Canada, which the way the things are going in Ontario doesn't look like we'll be able to go back. I've been a pessimist, and that's how things have really turned out for the Arrows. So do you guys think that starting in Atlanta will be a major issue for the Arrows? We do know that they do have a track record of, they went that crazy stretch in their first season away from home, but they also got to go back home. They got to go back home to their family. They got to go train in their own facilities. They, they got to go back and recharge their batteries with their families. This is a whole different animal.
Yeah,
I want to hear what you guys think about this, because I think it really is going to have an effect on the Arrows.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to have an impact on the season. I think, to me, when like the mental health aspect of it, as we heard like the NBA players, NHL players being like, being in a bubble, being like you said, away from the families and all that. It can definitely be a challenge and stuff, especially for the Arrows and stuff too. It's like, what are you gonna do on like an off day or anything? Like, are you gonna be able to go out and do something? We know the boys are pretty fond of Call of Duty, but I mean, you could probably only play so much Call of Duty in a hotel room, right? So I am curious to see how they actually do handle that. The mental health aspect of it is probably going to be a challenge, as it would be with anybody that's going to end up being in that situation. Um, but at the same time, like, I know a lot of Arrows players have talked about, I'm going to try to put this positive spin on the fact that they're in a bubble here, or the fact that they have to be in Atlanta. Because Dan is pessimistic, I am quite optimistic, the exact opposite of what Dan is.
I'm also sorry, Derek, I'm also in a different stage of life than you.
Fair.
I have a child and a wife that, like, I am a part of their life. Like, they rely on me to be part of their
That's
living situation. Like, it's one of the reasons why Rob Brower isn't joining the team.
Yeah, and I think Brower is a loss, and I think like if they're able to get him back, like if the border reopens, that'll be huge for their team. Obviously with Brower being gone and Asiata going to Queensland, right? So that's going to be Cole Keith switching over to Loosehead. And I think Keith was arguably the best tight head prop in the league last year. I think the only guy that you could argue was better than him was Dino Waldron, and I think you're going to lose that argument. But Keith switching over to Loosehead, which he has played before, but obviously that's an interesting storyline for the team. How well does he adapt to that? Pat Lynott is a great backup to have. But it's like that'll be your two Loosehead props, right? And then they're gonna have Cortez, Roland, and Ouellette on the tight head side. Hooker stays the same. So the front row is still solid, if shifted around a little bit. I think that's going to be part of the thing that does kind of help them too, right? Because we've always talked about how the Arrows are the deepest team in Major League Rugby. It's going to get tested a little bit this year. We know they're taking a squad of like 31 guys. There'll be a couple guys going to like Pride based on Silverthorne's interview on MLR Kickoff as well. So depth's going to be tested. But back to like, I think back to the bubble thing. Like when the Arrows were on that 8-game road trip, um, like a lot of players kind of talked about how that helped team bonding and helped the team like gel together, which is, helped toward the end of the season. So I think like if you could take it like that, that could be a little bit of a boost when you have to spend almost every waking moment with your teammates. You know what I mean? Like it can be a big bonding factor. The other thing, like, and I know Dan, I completely agree with what you're saying, like mental health wise, being away from your family and stuff's going to be tough. But I think if you were to like take a like I guess maybe like I want to say like almost like a non-emotional, like just analytical look at it, which is probably not the greatest thing to do in this kind of situation when you're obviously dealing with human people and their emotions and stuff. The Arrows are one of the best road teams in Major League Rugby. So like we saw that from the road trip. And I think the one thing that people maybe forget about that 8-game road trip where they went 4-4 is that coincided with the ARC. So they did that 4-4 with half their team because they had 9 guys. So over half of your starting lineup was gone for that road trip. And for most of it, and they came out of that 4-4. Now, when they got their team back, they ran through the league, 7-game winning streak to make the playoffs and all that. And I just think, when you look at that, they did that with like half their team. They played, we're talking about, Brower being gone. And obviously that hurts the team and stuff, but it's like they had, like I said, half their team was missing in 2019 for a good stretch, right? They had games where they they played like the 23 guys that they had available because it was like that. This is who we have. Like it's not even a selection process. It's just this is who we have, and they came out of that 4-4. They maybe in their minds, I think they feel that they probably could have come out of that like 6-2 in their minds. But I mean but that's probably fine too. But I think that's where I look at the Toronto Arrows right now is like they are really great on the road. So if you do have to put them on the road, then like they're going to be successful. They have the depth to deal with anybody that is unavailable to play. Fortunately, right now it is just Rob Brower that is confirmed that he is staying home, but I think they do have the depth to deal with that. And I think like I just look back at that 2019 season and be like, they did the longest road trip in MLR history with half their team, and they beat the San Diego Legion with like a 19
Yes.
torching.
And I get that. And Stu, I want to get to you in a second, but I just want to kind of piggyback off of that.
Yeah.
I think, and we don't know what the situation is like inside their bubble or their home in Atlanta, how much they're going to be able to see each other. If it's anything like any other bubble that is going on right now, or any other like how the NHL is running their when you're away and you're in hotels, you're not going to be able to do the hanging out like you did on that road trip. Which I think is going to be a big difference from making those connections. Like it's only going to have to be 6 feet apart, masks on, if they're allowed to do that. And if they're not allowed to do that, it's going to be all online, doing things like Call of Duty or Zoom calls. And like, it's just
be weird. It's probably going to be weird. I'm not saying it's not going to be weird. What I'm saying though, like, I think what I'm trying to say is that ultimately, like, we've seen this team battle through some crazy long, unrealistic road trips already. And I just ultimately think they have the depth to do it. And we've seen how well they're able to adapt based on that road trip that they had in the past. And I think ultimately, like, if I'm looking at the 12 teams in Major League Rugby, and I were to be like, we're going to put any one of those teams, we're going to put them in a bubble in a different country, and that team is still going to make the playoffs, it's like if you were to be like to pick one team to be able to do that, I would take the Toronto Arrows to do it.
For sure.
Because I think ultimately, like, that's going to be the like the mentality and the mindset is it's like, what we know that this is going to affect them in the hotel. And it's like, I know we'll probably talk about this later, but it's like, do you still think the Toronto Arrows are a playoff team? And I know I'm going to spoil a little bit about my view on this, but I still think they're a playoff team. Even if they're no matter if they're in a hotel or they're in their own beds, I still think they're a playoff team.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it is going to be weird. I'm not trying to like diminish any of the mental health aspects of this, because it's going to be weird. It's probably not going to be a whole lot of fun, but if you can lift a shield at the end of it, then it might be all worth it at that. But that's kind of, I guess, my take. I think they're the best road team in the league. Stick them on the road for the whole year. I think they might be able to make it work. Hopefully everyone stays healthy.
Stu, how do you feel about this situation? You've seen two sides of the coin, and that's what I love about Stu is he always has a balanced opinion, or he's going to agree with one of us. He's kind of a wild card too.
So, as someone who's not originally from Canada, and the last time I saw my family was over a year ago at this point, I understand that there's a difference between knowing that you're going to be away and therefore miss certain events going on, whether that's just with your family, your partner, or your children, and then actually being absent for it and realizing that you've missed something that at the time you weren't 100% sure that it's not important, or it's not as important as something else, and then feeling like you're isolated from the rest of everything that's going on because you're not there. I think it is going to be difficult. I do, however, think that even with the vaccination effort not being as quick as we would all hope in Canada, it is progressing very well in the United States, because the issue isn't with certain states and Ontario, it's with Canada as a whole and the United States as a whole. And it's so we could hope that the vaccine rate skyrockets and the majority of California or Atlanta or Utah or Texas are all vaccinated in time. Even if they were all vaccinated by the end of next week, which I'm not, but being hypothetical, it's that still wouldn't change the fact that the infection rate is so high across the United States as a whole. I think the mentality that the Arrows have taken going in is not the complete worst case scenario, which is the entire season's cancelled again, but the understanding that it's highly likely that there won't be any games played in Toronto, and meaning that they're going to have to be away for the entirety of the season, and then the playoffs. Again, I'm spoiling my choices of who's going to be making the playoffs.
I think they're still hopeful that they're going to be able to play.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Games.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like there's having hope, and then there's having
hope
reason.
Well, that's kind of my point. Yeah. That's my point, though. It makes this like we're also talking about how it stinks, but then we're also like they're going to make the playoffs.
But that's the thing. If you prepare, you got to prepare for the worst. You have to prepare.
Listen. If we went into this season with them playing in Toronto, I would say it's a slam dunk first overall in the division.
Dan's like, if play in Toronto, they go 18-0.
No, but like I think they're going to go first overall. I'm saying take this new home into consideration, and it suddenly is going to test them in ways that they've never been tested before. And as similar as it was to 2019, it's going to be a very different animal.
It will.
Yeah.
It'll be a different beast. But I like I said, I think they can do it.
Okay.
I do like. Do we talk about the actual team a little bit, or just that they're in Atlanta?
They're good.
They are.
I think
Listen,
with every episode that we've talked about a new signing, we've talked about the same thing about how it's the most, it's the deepest team in the East, maybe even in MLR at the moment. I think we all know how we feel about the Arrows.
Yeah, like take in consideration the new additions, take in consideration the chemistry that they have been developing from not only just the last 2 seasons, but with the Ontario Blues program in the CRC, they are going to be a strong contender.
Absolutely. I have 2 questions about the team going into the season.
Okay.
The first one is, especially since they didn't release any footage of the intra-squad game, so we got nothing to go off. But much like many other teams, and I think that's going to be an interesting week 1 thing. The teams that have played preseason games versus the teams that haven't played a game in a year.
Right.
But like my first question is, like, does the attack look any different with Rob Howley's influence?
Right.
Right. We'll see that. And that's my second question is, with Malcolm gone, Tukale's here, Ferguson's here, Dutois here, Adams, who's kicking?
Yeah.
Right. That's
1. Yes. 2. Adams.
You think it's going to be Adams? Fair enough.
I think it's going.
But you know what?
I'm not saying definite.
Money, man. Like, he's actually he's a really good kicker, man.
And you know, we talked about this. You guys talked about this with Andrew Ferguson too, right? Like,
yeah.
So that is a big question.
But that's the question though, because even in the intra-squad game, and it's like, maybe because they're playing in the dome and there's the post, and you know, again, from that Andrew Ferguson interview, we heard like the story of them just trying to, like, Sam Malcolm just picking off like bars and like support bars in the dome or whatever. But it's like the intra-squad game gave no indication as to who was kicking, or like the tweets and the coverage that came from the team. It gave no indication as to who the kicker was. Right? They announced like the guys that scored tries. They reported that, but they didn't give any indication as to what that is. They haven't shown like any of their like social media things. Like, they haven't really put out like any sort of indication. So I think going into the first game against Atlanta here, that's a question that I have about the team, and it's like,
especially a team like Atlanta they're so staunch defensively, they're gonna make you kick for points.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
So
that's
going to step up.
That'll be an interesting game too. I think we'll talk about the actual game later, but like, yeah, I think. But I think that'll be like, that's my question, and I think obviously we'll see the answer to it versus Atlanta. But you know, maybe we don't. Maybe it's like, maybe they give it to a couple of guys. Maybe let it feel out. But I think ultimately, I think we'll kind of see. And I mean, like, yeah, like there's a lot of guys that can do it. Just kind of looking at the back, you know, the options in the backs, even like Will Kelly, you know, can do it too. I mean, obviously, if you're going to go with the idea that Taylor Adams is your starting fly half, Will Kelly maybe isn't your go-to kicker at that point. But there's a lot of guys: Tukale, Gonzalez, Dutois, Kelly, Adams.
Yeah, lots of options there.
There's a lot.
My big question. My big question is how much. One is how much is Gaston Cortez going to end up playing, which now sounds like it's going to be a lot. Because it's funny, when we started this, when we started talking about Gaston Cortez coming, we're like, oh, elder statesman, you know, he's got premiership, championship experience, you know, he's been capped by Argentina. He's going to come over. He's going to help teach these young props like Keith and Lynott. And at the time, we didn't know about Ouellette yet. Tyler Rowland, you know, like, he's going to teach these guys all about his technique, what he's worked against, all that stuff. And then since the departures of Brower and Asiata, it's like, okay, Gaston, so you're going to be starting. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because not only has Rumball talked about it, but also Silverthorne, they both said that Cortez is someone that they're really looking forward to seeing. And I think Rumball described him as a beast. You know, he's been a big part of their training sessions and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the team just from his experience.
And obviously, I think like I'm sure a lot of people too, like two most excited, like the two biggest signings the team made, man, Manuel Montero, Joaquin Tukale. They're out of quarantine as of yesterday or whatever, and yeah, let's man, they look good in blue and white. So I mean, we knew that already because of Argentina, but yeah, they look good in slightly darker blue and white too.
Okay, guys. Well, let's move on, and here's what's going to happen. I now have a timer on my phone, and I'm going to time you guys, and you guys are going to and myself. We are going to give a brief update about some of the other teams. Who you think are the exciting new guys? How do you think they're going to do? And try to give as much information in 5 minutes as possible. And I think we can accomplish this. So, Derek, you are on the clock first, my friend, with Rugby United New York.
Obviously, the big Rugby United New York storyline right now is that Greg McWilliams has resigned, to be with his wife while she's battling cancer. So I mean, obviously probably a tough situation for them. Obviously a tough situation for them to be in. So he's resigned. Forwards coach Marty Veal looks to be taking over as the head coach of the team. So that's obviously just a big change to go through 2 weeks away from the start of the season. Um, as far as obviously Canadians on the team, we got Quinn Nawadi coming over from the Pacific Pride and the Toronto Wolfpack. So, you know,
First Canadian on the team ever?
first Canadian on RUNY. Yes, he's the first Canadian on RUNY. But he's also the first. Well, he's not actually. No, he's not. Ryan Burrows played for Old Glory. I was going to say he's the first Wolfpack player in MLR. But but either way, so Nawadi I think will be interesting because it's like obviously he's a very powerful ball carrier, one of those guys that can run around you just as easily as he can run through you. But he's got they got centers in New York, so they got Matina, Lockyer, and Leonard. So he might have to kind of prove himself in that little bit of that lineup. RUNY did add a lot of big names or whatever, like Samu Tuweki, Zach Tofalu, Andy Ellis, 28 cap All Black, 154 cap Crusaders, World Cup, 2 Super Rugby titles. The resume goes on and on. Everybody gets all excited about guys like Giddow and Adam Ashley Cooper lately, but one of the key All Black scrum halves in their reign of terror is over here. He's going to be part of a new halfback combination with Dan Hollingshead, who comes over from Bay of Plenty. Also has played a couple Hurricanes games in Super Rugby too. So it's a loaded roster. Obviously, one of the biggest names, both in size and stature, I guess, is coming in. Nick Savetta returns to US Rugby here. So Savetta, Breakley is your locks. That's an absolutely unreal combination. My only issue with the team, and I think they did a lot of really good things in their pack, because I think I think their scrum left a little bit to be desired last year. And I think if you want to compete with the big teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, because there's some packs in the East, you kind of had to do it. So I like the upgrades that they got. They got Raballo, Wilton Raballo from Brazil, Tawake, Tofolo, I already mentioned. Obviously Savetta, line out machine, line out monster. He's probably going to be one of the best in the line out at that. My only concern with the team, like actually looking at the way the team is constructed, my one concern, and it's a hypothetical concern, so that's why it bothers me that it's a concern, because it's a completely hypothetical situation, is those rumored Eagles test matches in the summer.
Oh,
Yes, that's my only concern with this team. You look at New York, like what is New York going to do if Scary Gold comes through and be like, I'm taking Breakley, Savetta, Hermesize, Samisin,
Fawcett.
Fawcett. You know what? Hey, we want to make sure Argentina doesn't cap Benjamin Bonasso either. So we're taking him. You got some like there's gonna be some holes, man. Like, I don't know what you're gonna do. You gotta like clone Kara Pryor. Like, I'm not sure what you're gonna do if that is the case. Beyond that, so it's like maybe there's a little bit of a lack of depth just in sheer numbers in the pack in New York, but like the actual pack, like if they get to roll James Rochford, one of the best props in the league, Dylan Fawcett, one of the best hookers in the league, Samu Tawake or Wilton Raballo, they're going to be new, but we'll see the impact that they have. They come up with some pedigree, or I mean, Raballo comes over from Austin, so we kind of know what he's got. But that'll be an unreal front row. Breakley Savetta, find a better 4-5 in the league anywhere. And then like Hermesai Simis, Kara Pryor. Could Kara Pryor be on the bench? Like, are you good enough to have Kara Pryor come on the bench? Who knows? And then obviously you have Minturn and Benassa at 8. So it's like that's your pack, man. That's good. It's just, do the Eagles impact it a little bit? And then that about sums it up. That about sums up my both my what I like about the roster and my concerns.
That was tidy. Nice job, Derek. All right, Stu. You are next up with the New Orleans Golds. NOLA Golds. Go.
Okay, so NOLA Gold, one of the OGs of MLR. They've had a pretty average record in MLR, 15 wins, 0 draws, 14 losses in the regular seasons. They've got some big names coming. I think some of the biggest including JP Duplessis, Stephen McLeish, Pat O'Toole, Brian Nort, Andrew Guerrera, Devin Short, Kim Barry, Damian Stevens, Timothy Gulliman, Keanu Andrade, Juan Capello, and Kyle Rogers. And to bring it back to our completely non-biased approach, Canadians in the team, very low, only 2, I'm afraid. But one of them is the captain, which is Eric Howard, who is a hooker, and well-known Canadian lock Kyle Bailey. And sadly, there's one confirmed departure, and it's a Canadian, and that's Lindsay Stevens has left for the bright lights of Los Angeles. And I say departures because there's a player that would have been playing for New Orleans Gold, but tragically, we know that Sean Riley is not with us anymore. And the events of his passing are just heartbreaking. He turned 30 on January the 12th this year. He was hospitalized the next day and announced dead on the 26th, just 2 weeks after that. It's not only that, some of the players' parents have died during this off season as well. This team has been forged now in tragedy and adversity, and that's their drive now going forward into the new season. If you've seen any sports movie, this is the moment where the team brings itself together and pulls out the Hollywood ending performance. I know there's a team near Hollywood, but this may be the Hollywood team for 2021. This is a year in which they can drive to do well, to honor those that they have lost. Now, to talk on a subject matter which is the complete opposite of Toronto's going to a new location, having to get new operations in place. The Gold have actually been very productive over the off-season with their grounds. They are now the permanent tenants of what was known as Zephyr Field or the Shrine on Airline. It's now probably going to be rebranded as the Gold Mine. They're moving all operations to the stadium now. That means they can also use the field for practice sessions, training, essentially making a bespoke training environment. So what does that mean for 2021? Well, if you look at their record from 2020, it was similar to the Arrows at the start of 2019. It was a win and a loss and a win and a loss. And now they seem to have everything in place for a full development going forward in the long term. So what we could actually be seeing here is the start of a NOLA renaissance, if you will. Everything now seems to be clicking together for them. They've got, like I said, some big signings. Damian Stevens, I've seen play in for Namibia in the World Cup. The only player for Namibia to score against the All Blacks in 2019. So, he's got a boot on him, to say the least. So he may be, doing kicking duties as well as scrum half duties as well, or winger duties, because he's that versatile and that quick. It's going to be interesting to watch, obviously, from like an Arrows perspective. We know that NOLA is the one black mark. But I'd say keep an eye out for NOLA Gold. I think they can really bring the power for the 2021 season.
I still remember kind of their collapse of 2019. They were they were the top dogs for most of 2019, and then with like a month left in the season, like they just kind of skirted downwards. They started so well last season.
Yeah.
So
they lost the last 4 games of 2019, and 3 of them were 7 points or fewer.
Yeah,
it's
tough.
They scored a lot in that season. They were like a very high flying, high power offensive team. They ran as the season wore on, they ran into trouble stopping tries too.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, 2020, like they did look really good in 2020.
Oh yeah, their opening game was 46-13.
Yeah, they made Old Glory look like they should be reconsidering joining the league, and then Old Glory bounced back and won 4 games in a row. But what?
All right, well, I'm up next talking with the only team I'm going to talk about for good reasons, because I'm not very smart. I'm going to be talking about the New England Free Jacks starting now. The Free Jacks have gone through a lot of different changes. They announced a new head coach in Ryan Martin from Otago and the Mitre 10 circuit. He is bringing with him a whole bunch of Otago players and also just players in general from the Mitre 10 Cup. They're really trying to pull experience from that pool. They've had some big signings. Tera Mintembu from the Sharks in South Africa. He's signed to a long-term contract till 2023. We mentioned it earlier. Vili Tolatahu is joining the team from the Seawolves. He is predominantly going to be playing hooker. Aleki Morris Loam, a center from Otago, is going to be a interesting one. Dougie Fife, Scotland Sevens, Edinburgh winger fullback. He was like, when I played Rugby 20, he was like my first pro that I got, and I scored a bunch of tries with him. So I'm excited to see him play in MLR. It's one of those situations where it's like, played you on a video game, I get to watch you on the pitch. Awesome. But they've lost pieces as well. Sean McNulty's gone to the Giltinis. Ben Landry is out. Diana Miskill, the Missile, he's over in France now. Timothy Guillemin is with RUNY, which is
actually Guillemin went to NOLA.
So there has been a lot of change in terms of their personnel. Their time in MLR hasn't been, the best. They've got a record of 1-4, so it's not great. They came out storming, beat RUNY, that crazy Las Vegas game, and never really recovered. They've also lost Tog Leader and Liam Steele, who were 2 really big pieces of their backline. I mean, Tog is pursuing a kicking job in professional American football, and Liam apparently has a season-ending injury, and he's just staying in New Zealand. So, wish those 2 the best. They've got pieces. They definitely have pieces, and that's obvious. Kensuke Hatsumiyama, Maya, Yama, holy moly, prop from Japan, multiple caps, was part of the 2015 Brighton Miracle against the Springboks. They've got captain Josh Larson from Canada, so it's great to see him pull that on again. Jack Ram from Tonga is going to be so much fun to watch. It just seems to me that other than, a few guys, there's going to be a lot of who's going to be the game breaker for this team. They got Bolden Waka and Dougie Fife, and Wakanabo, that's a Fijian that they signed as well. But like, it doesn't look like they're going to have the strongest scrum, which is going to be hard at set piece time. And do they have the finishers to make it happen? That is going to be the biggest problem in my eyes for them. Maybe Ryan Martin pulls from his Otago experience and really lets them have a creative kind of flow with their game. And again, having so many guys that have Mitre 10 experience is going to bring a different flair to this team. But if I go back and I look at their plus minus last season, it was minus 19. So, again, that's what happens when you lose. I just don't see them being able to compete with the NOLAs, the Arrows, the RUNYs of the year. That being said, we have spent a lot of time talking about what they are doing within their business and developing their academy program, the best academy program in the league. Like, they are so passionate about making this run, and they're so ambitious about it. It's only going to breed success. And they've got Patrick Chun and we've mentioned Nate Ebner as owners. I think that they've got a really great team set up, and I know the fans there are hungry for rugby since they haven't had a home game yet. I just don't think that this year is going to be the year for them. Rugby ATL are the Toronto Arrows tenants or landlords.
Yeah, so
that makes more sense.
There we go. Yeah, so the landlords. But first of all, I feel like I forgot to mention Kakabalavu and Fuatai when I was talking about RUNY. So those are also two pretty big names that they have, and I just feel bad that I didn't do that. So moving on. Anyways, Rugby ATL. Two Canadians, obviously Matt Heaton, Connor Keys. Matt Heaton, co-captain. He's as Rugby ATL points out a lot. He's the Rugby Canada Player of the Year. Heaton is one of the premier open side flankers in Major League Rugby. He's all over the pitch, on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side. He's a key cog. He's gonna start unless he can't for some reason. Connor Keys at lock, it looked like he hurt his leg in the silver versus black inter-squad game. So that's interesting. He didn't play in the exhibition game against Utah, so hopefully he's back soon. I think though, for Keys, kind of looking at Rugby ATL's lock situation with Marno Redelinghuyse and Johan Momsen in how good they performed last year and stuff. And it's like, I think Keys I think is in a little bit of a battle for like playing time with those two guys. I think Rugby ATL as a whole is a pretty stacked squad. So it's like, I like the way that Scott Lawrence has built the team. I like the way they kind of it's interesting because I think there's something to be said versus like what we were just talking, the team we are just talking about in New England Free Jacks, where there's a ton of turnover. I think there's something to be said for teams that are kind of like, these are the guys that we want, and this is the program that we're going to build. And I think Scott Lawrence kind of taking a lot of, what he built at Life University and kind of growing it up into Major League Rugby. I love that strategy of it. They brought in, more Life University guys like Ryan Reese and Damon Torres this year as well. Obviously a lot of their, they have a lot of new additions too. Bautista Escura, the former Puma, that's going to be, he can combine with, like, say, Robbie Petzer in the centers. He can play a little bit of fly half. They also brought in Jonas Petrakopoulos from RUNY, Connor Cook, as I already mentioned, Robbie Petzer, and coming over from the Raptors. So it's like they're taking like the core that they already have, and they're like just being like, we just got to add a little piece here and there. And that's what I really do like about this team. Te Rangatiro Waikota as well. Like, that's a nice fullback addition coming over from New Zealand as well. I think ultimately, kind of looking at the team though, the one thing that I think that's the one image that kind of sticks out to me from last year is just kind of the arrows running them over with the scrum, right? And I just kind of wonder if they upgraded at that position and in that style enough. I think their back line is unreal. I mean, you have Gauss, that's a new addition as well. Gauss, like Coleman, Davidson, their draft picks, the draft pick John Scotty. Like I said, you can have as Cura, Jeremy Misalagu as well in the center as well, or Petzer as like you can kind of mix and match. You can have versatile guys throughout your lineup. I think Coleman is one of the best fly halves in MLR, and now you can combine that with Gauss, and that's like a nice little South African 9-10 combination. Um, so like I think they have a really good back row if you were to look at like Heaton, Connor Cook, Ross Deakin or Jason Dom. Like it's a really good team. It's like there's not like a whole lot of necessarily holes in the team. It's just I do kind of wonder, like, especially watching the preseason game with Utah, where like Paul Mullen just had a field day and was just like penalty after penalty. And it's like, when you end up with in a matchup against, say, NOLA or Toronto or even the Free Jacks, like, can your scrum compare and can your scrum match up? And I think, as we all kind of know in a lot of Major League Rugby so far, it's like your scrum kind of is, I guess, what feeds the wolf a little bit, right? So it's like if your scrum's good, you're probably good. If your scrum's not good, you're probably struggling in the standings a little bit. So I think,
There's your timer.
ooh, all right. So I mean, ultimately, I'm like,
Scared me.
has the scrum improved? I think that's the biggest question. I do appreciate them opening the doors to the Toronto Arrows and being accommodating landlords, which I'm sure will coincide with them just being like, here, guys, free bonus point victory. Welcome to our house. I'm sure that probably won't happen. But ultimately, like I like what they've done. I like that, they just kind of add in the pieces that they need to fill those holes where they need to see fit. And it's a good roster top to bottom. It's just like I'm not sure how confident I feel seeing like the way the game against Utah completely went, even though they won that game. But
All right. Well, we're gonna finish it off with Stu, and you are gonna give us a little preview of Old Glory DC.
Yes. So, only 5 games under their belt in terms of MLR, and it didn't really start off too well, as we mentioned before. The 13-46 loss to NOLA Gold, but then they were, they were providing strong results. A shock win at the time against the defending champion Seattle, then wins against Houston and Austin in the Texas Double, and then back home for a final victory against ATL before the season was cancelled until this week. We've got a few big additions to the forwards, including Jamie Deva or Deva. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce that wrong.
Oh, I've butchered enough names tonight. You're fine.
Hooray! You got James King, a hooker, Jack Carroll, another prop, Stephen Longwell, another prof, David Beach and Casey Renau, locks, and both from the MLR draft. Mungo Mason as flanker, Nick Mearsham as a flanker as well. Featured guest on the show, Luke Campbell, number 8. Matt Gordon as flanker, Danny Thomas as scrum half, Owen Sheehy as a fly half, Sam Casano as a wing, and DeMonte Noble as a wing as well. Interesting to mention wings because the other Canadians on the teams are wings and centers. And another guest on the show, Doug Fraser, and the one mustached Canadian that we haven't had from Old Glory, Kieran Hearn. But we'll get there. We'll get there one day. There are a few noted departures. Travis Larson has headed over to Legion. And of course, the big World Cup winner, Tendai the Beast Umtorera, has announced his retirement from the sport. So unfortunately, won't be able to see him play. But we're also not going to be able to see them play at Cardinal Stadium, which is also part of the Catholic University of America campus. And there seemed to have been the issue with hosting at a university because of the restrictions that university was putting in place. So this year, going forward, they will be playing at Segra Field, which technically isn't actually in Washington. It's in Leesburg, Virginia. From what the owners have said, it is a bit of a drive to get there, but they were thinking about accessibility because of COVID, and knowing that this would be the only option they would have to be able to have fans at the game. One, the benefit is it's a single-use field, so there's not going to be all those lines that were on at Cardinal Stadium, or for the Arrows fans, similar to like Lamport Stadium, so none of the extra lines to confuse people. And there has been a bit of a question mark over Old Glory's success, because they do say they have the 4 wins, but 2 of them were against teams that were always struggling, which was Houston and Austin in 2020. Another win came against Atlanta, which was one of the other expansion sides. And then Seattle, which at the time was a shock win, but we now know was part of a pattern that Seattle had. Maybe their seawall wasn't as strong as it once was. That said, I still think they are going to be one of the teams to beat. Their the back line, so their wingers, their centers, and the fullbacks are all big guys, and they're all fast guys as well. And usually it's big guy or fast guy. Oh, nice phone. Oh, so to have big and fast in the back line is going to be very intimidating for other teams. Will they be able to repeat the success? Sorry, of the Final 4 games from 2020. Well, here's hoping. Maybe not against Toronto, but here's hoping.
Yeah, and I think that Doug Wilkie kind of tweeted at saying, like, do you think that the Eastern Conference is stronger than the Western Conference?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
In paper, but like the other problem is, again, 3 of those teams have only played 5 games.
No,
so
that's fair. I think that's a fair thing, but
it's
but also
on paper they're a heck of a lot stronger. And if we go based on last season,
that might also be the problem too. Is like I've seen Houston play a lot of games, and I know that
we've seen Houston and Austin.
Yeah, I've seen
we've seen in Utah. We've seen how they play. Yeah, that's fair. It's
Austin will be good this year, though. As we mentioned.
Austin should be good this year. Yeah, after seeing how they played. Yeah,
guys.
Well, let's start making our predictions for how this season's going to turn out. Predictions for the East. Who is going to be your best newcomer? Do you go first?
Well, there are a lot of new names in the East, to say the least. That rhymed. But I am going to, and I know this may come across as a shock to you, but I'm going to have to go with a Toronto signing. And in a league that is now taking in a lot of experienced players, and having positive receptions of being in MLR has been one of the factors that this player has signed. I believe, to my knowledge, this is the first signing for Toronto that's more than 1 year. And, they say they're your utility back, but they've also have an incredible record, including being the recipient of Try of the Year award by World Rugby. So I think the best newcomer will be Joaquin Tucolet.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's a difficult one to argue with. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to. I guess we're all gonna sound super homerish during this segment.
I won't. I am not going to.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, my pick, actually, I'm gonna go. I went back to the rookie of the year route. Sorry, Tucolet, you're gonna be awesome, but not a rookie. Not a true rookie, anyways. I'm going with Sayaki Vikilani. Just because everything I hear about this kid is that he's absolutely unreal, probably better than what you should be at 19 years old. I know he's got a little bit of an injury that he's dealing with to start the season, but I mean, I know like there's a lot of big name arrow signings this year, but he's probably the one that I'm most excited to see actually hit the pitch,
Yeah.
just because I kind of want to see what the hype is about, right? So maybe he's the guy that when Ardron retires, he can take that 8 jersey away from him. Maybe I'm super bold in saying that, and maybe it's far too soon to say that, but there's only one way to find out, which is probably to watch the Major League Rugby season.
Yeah, no, I'm sticking with the team that I did all my research for. And I kind of already mentioned him because of Rugby 20, but I'm really excited to see what Dougie Fife can do in the league. He is a sevens player who's not afraid to get into contact, which is great. You sometimes see sevens players that transition into 15s and they tend not to do well with the high balls and the contact and he's also had experience with Edinburgh, so he's got Pro 14 experience. So I'm excited to see what Dougie's going to do. I'm fired up for him. All right, guys, who's going to be the best Canadian in the East?
And there's only a couple to pick from in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Just a handful.
So the East is obviously loaded with Canadians. For one reason in particular is that 27 of them play for the Toronto Arrows. And then you have a handful across all of the other teams in the league. My pick for this is going to be Ben Lesage. I think he's going to be absolutely vital for the Toronto Arrows in the center. I think he's one of the best defensive centers in Major League Rugby as far as his tackling ability, his ability to, just cover kicks that are coming his way, just shift down the line, make sure there's no holes. It's really tough to catch Ben Lesage missing a tackle. So I'm going to pick him in order to do that. And I think I don't think I think in 2015, I think we just got a small taste of his actual offensive ability. He made some slick passes that set up tries. Hopefully he can get a couple of his own this year. Obviously, this season's going to be a little bit longer. And you know what? Also, if DTH Vandermerver says he can play in the Premiership, that's good enough for me. I believe DTH Vandermerver because he has a pretty good rugby resume. So I'm going to go with Ben Lesage.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Ben Lesage.
All right, I'm going to change it to Matt Keaton now.
No, stop. We can agree on something for once.
Yeah.
No, I think you kind of pointed at it. We only kind of just started seeing the cusp of his creativity.
Again, guys,
and more.
No bias on this podcast. No. Matt Keaton's a really good player too.
You only kind of saw near the last couple games that partnership he was building with Dan Moore. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
There's a reason why I said we should pick a Canadian and pick a non-Arrows Canadian.
No.
Because I also picked Ben Lesage.
There you go. Well, then let's go.
Wow. All right.
So the reason why
the guy was on the podcast once, and now we all think he's the MVP.
Because we got to talk about books. I'm very passionate about books.
But my non-Arrows Canadian is someone who's also been on the podcast, and that is Doug Fraser. I've gone over the highlights of DC to prep for what I was talking about, and yeah, he not only is he the try factory for DC last year, and beautiful crossfield kick against NOLA Gold to pin it down with no obstruction at all. I thought that was amazing to watch, and that was in what would arguably be the worst game in DC's short history in MLR. But he has great defensive efforts as well, and because I think that's the one issue is that you think of wingers and you think of pass them the ball, they'll run in and score the try. But as has been shown, is that you need to have a good defensive tact as well. And Doug definitely has that. So he's my non-Arrows Canadian.
All right, so we got Fraser, Heaton from me, Dan, your non-Arrow Canadians, and Stu was clearly right. We should have done this. I'm surprised we all went with Ben Lesage though, because
that is pretty impressive.
I mean, when DTH says, exactly. He's too good for MLR, I think that's kind of saying something.
I know that weighed a lot.
I'm really excited to see what Josh Larson's going to do with New England. Again, I'm sticking with the Free Jacks. Captain, again, he's just one of those guys that just does all of the gritty, dirty stuff that you expect from a lock, especially after watching Ian Henderson's performance against Scotland. He did all the dirty work and led to the winning penalty. And I think that Josh Larson is of the same ilk. He works hard, and he is going to, have a big season, I think, for the Free Jacks as captain. And guys, who is going to be your MVP this season in the East? You guys want me to go first?
Yeah. Go
All
on.
right, okay. I think that it's going to be someone from NOLA, and I think it's going to be JP Duplessis.
Okay.
I think that he had a huge impact on San Diego's dominance in the West the last couple years, and he had a short stint playing with Ma and Nanu. I think that he's going to take all of that rich experience that he's gotten in MLR, and he's going to come over and play with a team that just loves to cause chaos. And I think he is going to do very well for himself this year. Kind of think of oh God, I'm forgetting his name. Australian blonde, played for NOLA. He destroyed the league in 2019. Tristan Blewett. He's getting the second coming of Tristan Blewett. He's gonna be the talk of the league. That's how confident I am.
I was also actually thinking NOLA too. My pick was going to be Cam Dolan. Obviously, it's try scoring machine. I think with their scrum, as you kind of he's going to get a lot of opportunities with some in tight 8-man picks. And obviously, he's just an animal on both sides of the ball. Such a fun player to watch. That again, though, it might be contingent on provided he can actually play the whole season. If he's got to leave halfway through it to go do some Eagles duty, probably won't be the MVP. But if he's playing the whole year, then I think Dolan will be the guy. I mean, he was at the top and he has the breakdown steals, he scores tries, he does everything that you want your 8-man to do. So key cog on that team, and I think he's gonna be in for another great year here.
I also went with Cam Dolan because
all right.
Because for everything you just said, but now that you mentioned the fact that, because it completely skipped my mind that the US could be playing tests against the Lions and the Springboks, and you do make a good point that if he's not there for half the season, can he be the MVP? I would then say that second choice to being MVP is another Eagles capped player, but from DC, and that is Threaten Palamo.
He's a beast. So that's a great choice.
I just for sake of argument, because how did we go through all of that and then none of us picked an Arrow to be MVP? But just
because when the entire team is an MVP, it's rude to just pick one out.
Arrow's MVP. Pick a player. Arrow's MVP this year.
I think we've already mentioned
Taylor Adams.
Ben. We said best Canadian.
I think Taylor Adams is going to have to be the MVP this season.
See, I think it's going to be Thomas De La Vega. I think Thomas De La Vega wasn't the biggest name signing from the 2020 offseason, but I think he was the best signing from the 2020 offseason. And I think that already shown through with his work in the lineout and the leadership and stuff in his team. Mm-hmm. So I think Arrow's MVP finishing, if Cam Dolan does go to the Eagles, the league MVP would be Tommy De La Vega in my mind.
In that case, then mine would be from the Arrows, Manuel Diana,
nice,
who I think was the signing for 2020. And after rumors that he may be going to Bristol, I'm glad he's sticking down in the Great White North, even though it's been relocated to Atlanta. But
the Deep South, the Great White North and Deep South. All right, guys.
Two extremes of latitude and longitude.
let's do our rankings, our preseason rankings going into the season. So Derek, why don't you start? Give us your
So
lineup.
when we were talking about a few minutes ago or whatever about, is the East better than the West? And the reason I say the East is better than the West, because I think the East is a lot tighter than the West. And I think, as weird as it might sound, I think I will listen to anybody make an argument that any one of these 6 teams wins the conference. And at the same time, I think you can listen to anybody make an argument that any of these 6 teams finishes last in the conference. It's gonna be tight. We'll see how the season goes. But I think there's so much just randomness. I think it's the East. I think is going to be a bloodbath. Like, it's just, I don't necessarily think someone's going to run away with it. I don't necessarily think someone's going to run away with it. I think it's going to be tight between all 6. I feel like, the teams in the West, the 2 playoff teams in the West, I feel like are going to win the West. I feel like the 2 teams in the East are going to survive the East, and then have to go play probably, maybe possibly smash the Western Conference champion in the final. But so because of that, I don't even know if I feel like going like ranking them. I'm going to say Toronto, NOLA, they make the playoffs. Everyone else ties for 3rd.
All right, what do you think, Stu?
I'm going to echo those sentiments. I think the West is going to be decided on points, and the East is going to be decided on point difference. I can see more than one team finishing with the same score, and then it's going to be down to how many points are scored or how many tries have been scored. It's going to be far narrower, and I think that may, as Derek said, set up the East to be the champions for 2021. But I'm actually going to do a ranking. So I would say in 6th, I would put New England. I mean, even Dan, you mentioned that going through it, you don't think it's like the strongest names to have out there against, especially all the other teams that we've mentioned. 5th, Atlanta. 4th, I would say RUNY. 3rd, and just missing out on the playoffs. I think this is the issue as well, is that because this year it's just the top 2, and
you got to be great.
Well, previous year it would have been the top 3, and then doing it that way, I think may have made it more interesting. But it is what it is. I would say then 2nd is NOLA, and top of the rankings would be Toronto.
See, because I think one of you guys did this last week too. It's like, how do you pick an MVP and then not have his team make the playoffs?
You can have a great individual season and still not make. It's the Connor McDavid discussion.
Yeah, a player doesn't make the team.
Season.
The playoffs.
That's not the MVP is
most valuable. That's most valuable. That's true. It's most valuable. And Sam Windsor might be the MVP.
Yeah.
What does Houston do with us? Like,
until they create, until we differentiate who's the top try scorer, point getter, Anyways, I've got the Free Jacks in 6th, Old Glory in 5th, Rugby ATL 4th, RUNY in a really close 3rd, the Arrows 2nd, and NOLA 1st. I think we might be coming down to a last week matchup like in 2019 where the Arrows have to drop goal their way back into the playoffs.
It's going to be tight.
It's going to be tight. Everything considered that we talked about the Arrows, I think is going to have a big play into it. All right, guys. Well, let's finish up with our week 1 predictions. This is going to be very, very exciting.
We get to make
first week of MLR. We get to make predictions. Woohoo!
Rugby's back.
NOLA home versus DC. Who do you guys have?
NOLA.
Especially
like as a weird part of this is because they have played preseason games, so they can kind of get it. They kind of got back into it. DC unfortunately had their games canceled, and also like NOLA smashed DC last year, so I think that's playing a little bit of a factor into it. So yeah, NOLA.
San Diego versus RUNY.
San Diego.
You know what? I'm gonna go with a little upset out the gate. I'm gonna pick RUNY.
Ooh, okay. I'm keeping this for sake of knowing who is wrong, who is right.
No, we're keeping track of this.
Oh, we're keeping track of this. We did that last year. LA versus New England. I'm saying LA.
LA.
I think this is such a fascinating game. Just because it's LA's first one in the Coliseum too. They put some videos up in the Coliseum too. It looks sweet. The guilty stuff in it.
I will say that New England do have a good track record in open air stadiums in their first week. So,
just because Stu said they would finish last, I'm going to pick New England.
I also said it too.
Well, I just want to get this team that you said would finish last off to a good start.
Okay, Rugby ATL hosting the Arrows. I think we can all.
Rugby ATL and the Arrows, both the home teams, technically, weirdly.
No, they are not. Tell that to the schedule. Stu, who do you got?
Does the winner of this game get like the bigger room? Like, does the more time with the TV and stuff?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a close game, probably closer than this fixture last year, but I'm going to go with the Arrows as well.
It's hard. Like you just talked about it with DC. They didn't have any. The Arrows didn't have any pre-games other than their own.
Yeah, and Atlanta did. But you know what I did see in that Atlanta game was a team with a pretty good scrum, kind of did some damage to them too. So Arrows are all scrum men. So you know what? I mean, realistically, are we like? Come on, Dan? Are you pretending you're going to pick against the Arrows with that comment there?
No. I'm picking Toronto.
Oh no, exactly. Why are we having this conversation? This isn't the ATL podcast.
All right, moving on then. Moving on. Houston home to Seattle. Who are you guys picking?
Seattle.
Actually, I'm not entirely sure now that the announcement that Stoller and Cutsy have left. Okay, I'm going to pick the wild card. I'm going to pick Houston.
Oh, nice.
Hey, Stu is picking Houston. Okay, and the last game of the week is Austin versus Utah. I'm picking Austin all the way. Go AGs. Derek?
I gotta go Austin on this one too. Hopefully Hassler's back, but
hopefully Hassler's back. Yeah. And Stu, who are you picking?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Austin as well, especially after their performance against LA.
So what do we got here? Three unanimous games? NOLA, Toronto, and Austin, the three unanimous games. All right.
Yes. Stu and I seem to be on the same. Oh no, that's not true. Well, guys, this is it. We are only a few days away from Major League Rugby, and if you guys want to listen to more of our previews, we did the Western Conference last week. We've been interviewing the players for the past couple months leading into it, talking about preseason, a whole bunch of other things. So feel free to look back on YouTube on all the podcast platforms to find more of our episodes. Give us a review. Let us know how you're enjoying it, or if you're not enjoying it. And you know what? Let us know how excited you are. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Let us know how you're getting fired yourself up. What are you guys doing for your first Arrow game of the season? Let us know. I am fired up about this, guys.